Welcome to Poirot's Mysteries, exploring the brilliance of Hercule Poirot's detective work.
Imagine a grand English manor, its halls whispering secrets under the glow of chandeliers. A scream pierces the night. Sir Reginald Ashford lies dead, a letter opener in his heart. Was it greed, a forbidden love, or a betrayal hidden in plain sight? As shadows close in, only Hercule Poirot, with his razor-sharp mind, can unravel a web of lies where everyone has a motive and no one is innocent. Who wielded the blade, and what secret drove them to kill? The truth awaits, but it will shock you. Chapter 1. The Gathering at Blackthorn Manor. The late September sun hung low over the Sussex countryside, casting a golden sheen across the rolling lawns of Blackthorn Manor. The estate, a sprawling relic of Jacobean grandeur, stood resolute against the creeping chill of autumn, its ivy-clad walls and mullioned windows exuding an air of timeless dignity. Yet beneath its serene facade, a quiet unease simmered, as though the very stones whispered secrets to those who paused to listen. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion of Hercule Poirot, stepped from the chauffeured Rolls-Royce and adjusted his hat, squinting against the fading light. He had been invited to Blackthorn Manor by its owner, Sir Reginald Ashford, a retired diplomat with a penchant for lavish gatherings and a reputation for ruthless cunning in his younger days. Hastings, though no stranger to grandeur, felt a prickle of curiosity at the summons. Sir Reginald's letter had been cordial but vague, hinting at a weekend of most stimulating company and a matter requiring discreet observation. The latter, Hastings knew, was code for Poirot's unique talents, though the great detective himself had been maddeningly silent on the details during their train journey from London. The manor's oak doors swung open, and a butler, tall, gaunt, and impeccably formal, shared Hastings into the grand hall. The air was heavy with the scent of polished wood and beeswax, and a vast chandelier, weathered face betraying a hint of impatience. Beside him stood Mrs. Beatrice Langley, a widowed novelist of some renown, her sharp wit and penchant for scandalous tales making her a frequent guest at Blackthorn. Completing the circle was Mr. Victor Crane, a young stockbroker with slicked hair and an overly confident smile, whose recent engagement to Clara had set tongues wagging in London society. "Captain Hastings," Sir Reginald's voice boomed with practiced warmth. "Delighted you could join us. And where, pray, is the inimitable Monsieur Poirot?" "He'll be along presently," Hastings replied, offering a polite nod. "He was detained by a small matter at the station, something about a misplaced valise." Lady Eleanor raised an eyebrow, her lips curving slightly. "One does not expect a man of Monsieur Poirot's reputation to be troubled by such trifles." "Oh, you'd be surprised," Hastings said with a chuckle. "Poirot's fastidiousness knows no bounds. He'll have the station master reorganizing the luggage room before he's through." The room laughed, though Clara's smile was fleeting, her eyes darting toward the window, as though expecting someone, or something, beyond the glass. Hastings noted the tension in her posture, the way her fingers tightened around her bracelet. A lover's quarrel with Crane, perhaps? Or something deeper? As the group exchanged pleasantries, the conversation turned to the weekend's agenda: a series of dinners, a garden party, and a private auction of rare manuscripts from Sir Reginald's collection. The centerpiece was to be a 16th-century illuminated manuscript, said to be worth a small fortune, which had drawn the interest of collectors and scholars alike. Hastings, no expert in antiquities, nonetheless sensed an undercurrent of excitement, and perhaps greed, among the guests. Mrs. Langley, her eyes gleaming, leaned forward. "They say the manuscript contains coded messages, Sir Reginald. A secret worth killing for, perhaps?" Sir Reginald laughed uncomfortably. "Bonsoir, mes amis," Poirot said, his voice smooth and precise. "It is a great pleasure to join such distinguished company.
Sir Reginald, I thank you for your most gracious invitation." "Poirot, my dear fellow," Sir Reginald strode forward, clapping him on the shoulder. "We're honoured to have you. Come, let me introduce you." As introductions were made, Hastings watched Poirot's reactions closely. The detective's smile was polite, but his eyes were already at work, cataloguing every detail. The way Lady Eleanor's fingers brushed her husband's arm, the slight tremor in Clara's voice, the forced joviality of Victor Crane. Poirot, Hastings knew, was not merely observing. He was assembling the pieces of a puzzle that, as yet, no one else could see. Dinner was announced, and the party moved to the dining room, where a long mahogany table gleamed under candlelight. The meal was exquisite: consommé, roasted pheasant, and a delicate soufflé, but the conversation was stilted, as though each guest were guarding their words. Poirot, seated beside Hastings, said little, his attention seemingly absorbed by the symmetry of his cutlery. Yet Hastings knew better. Poirot was listening, analyzing, waiting for the first crack in the facade of civility. As the clock struck 9, a distant bell tolled from the village church, its mournful note echoing across the estate. Clara flinched, her wineglass trembling in her hand. Victor reached for her, but she drew away, her eyes fixed on her father. "Clara, my dear," Lady Eleanor said sharply, "do control yourself." "It's only the bell." "Yes, Mamma," Clara murmured, but her voice was hollow. Hastings glanced at Poirot, who met his gaze with the faintest nod. Something was amiss at Blackthorn Manor, and though no crime had yet been committed, the air was thick with foreboding. The little grey cells, Hastings thought, were already at work. Chapter 2. Tomorrow. "Hear, hear," murmured Dr. Malcolm Finch, though his tone lacked conviction. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, ever the provocateur, leaned forward, her eyes glinting with mischief. "And to secrets," she added, her voice low and teasing. "For what is a treasure without a mystery to guard it?" Clara Ashford, seated across from her, set her glass down with a clink, her face pale. "Must everything be a mystery, Mrs. Langley?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can we not simply enjoy the evening?" Victor Crane, her fiancé, placed a hand on her arm, his smile tight. "Clara, darling, you're overwrought. It's been a long day." Lady Eleanor's sharp gaze cut across the table. "Clara, do compose yourself. We have guests." Poirot's eyes flickered briefly to Clara, then to Lady Eleanor, but he said nothing, his expression one of polite detachment. Hastings, however, felt a pang of sympathy for the young woman, whose nervous demeanour seemed at odds with the poised elegance of her surroundings. The party adjourned to the drawing-room, where coffee was served and a fire crackled in the hearth. Sir Reginald excused himself to attend to a small matter in his study, promising to return shortly. The guests settled into small groups, Mrs. Langley regaling Dr. Finch with tales of her latest novel, Victor and Clara speaking in hushed tones by the window, and Lady Eleanor presiding over the room with the air of a queen surveying her court. Poirot, declining coffee, stood by a bookcase, idly examining a leather-bound volume, though Hastings suspected he was listening to every word spoken in the room. At precisely 10:15 p.m., a piercing scream shattered the quiet. It came from the direction of the study, sharp and raw, cutting through the murmur of conversation. Every head turned, and for a moment, then shook his head. "He's gone. Dead not more than 10 minutes, I'd wager." Poirot, who had entered silently, surveyed the scene with the precision of a watchmaker. His eyes moved from the letter opener to the open window, then to the desk where a single sheet of paper lay untouched by blood. He tilted his head, his mustache twitching slightly. as though the room itself were speaking to him. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, almost to himself. "A tragedy, and yet a puzzle most intriguing." Hastings, standing by the door, felt a chill that had little to do with the open window. "Good Lord, Poirot," he whispered. "Who could have done this?" Poirot's gaze met his, calm but piercing. "That, mon ami, is what we shall discover. But first, we must observe. The truth, it hides in the details." The butler, who had appeared silently, was dispatched to summon the local constable, though Hastings suspected the village police would be out of their depth. Mrs. Langley, her novelist's instincts alight, hovered near the desk, her eyes darting over the scene as if committing it to memory. "A locked room, almost," she mused aloud. "The window, perhaps? Or someone in this very house?" "Enough speculation, madame," Poirot said sharply, though his tone remained polite. "We must preserve the scene as it is. Touch nothing, s'il vous plaît." Lady Eleanor, now seated in a chair brought by the butler, looked up, her eyes red but her voice steady. "Who would do this to Reginald? He had enemies, yes, but here, among us?" Poirot turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Madame, it is often among those closest that the deepest wounds are struck. But rest assured, Hercule Poirot will find the truth." As the guests were ushered back to the drawing-room, Poirot lingered, his eyes scanning the study once more. Hastings watched as he crouched by the desk, examining the letter-opener's handle, then moved to in uneasy silence, their faces etched with varying shades of shock, suspicion, and guarded calculation. The fire in the hearth had dwindled to embers, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with the secrets of the house. Captain Hastings stood near the doorway, his soldier's instincts alert, watching the group as if they were pieces on a chessboard, each poised for an unexpected move. Hercule Poirot, however, was not among them. He had remained in the study, insisting on a moment alone before the local constable's arrival could disturb the scene. Hastings knew his friend's methods well. Poirot would be examining every detail: the angle of the letter opener, the placement of papers, the faint smudge on a glass, with the precision of a jeweler inspecting a flawed gem. Yet even Hastings, accustomed to Poirot's eccentricities, felt a pang of impatience. A man was dead, and the air of Blackthorn Manor crackled with the promise of further revelations. The distant crunch of gravel announced the arrival of the police. A moment later, the butler ushered in Constable Hargreaves, a stout man with a ruddy face and a mustache that rivaled Poirot's in ambition, if not in elegance. Behind him trailed a young sergeant, notebook in hand, looking distinctly out of his depth. Hargreaves surveyed the room with the air of a man accustomed to petty thefts and village squabbles, not murder in a grand estate. "Where's the body?" he demanded, his voice gruff. "And who's in charge here?" Lady Eleanor rose, her composure regained, though her hands trembled slightly. "My husband, Sir Reginald Ashford, was the master of this house. He's in the study. I'll take you there." "No need, madame," came a calm, accented voice from the doorway. Poirot entered, his small frame commanding the room with an authority that belied his stature. "I, Hercule Poirot, have examined the scene. Looks like a crime of passion. Someone got angry, grabbed the nearest thing." Poirot raised an eyebrow, his expression one of polite skepticism. "Passion, Monsieur le Constable? Perhaps. But observe, the letter opener, it is driven deep with precision. No signs of a struggle, no papers disturbed. And the window, it is open, yet the dust on the sill is untouched. Passion, it is messy. This is calculated." Hargreaves frowned, clearly unaccustomed to such scrutiny. "You saying someone planned this? In a house full of people?"
Précisément, Poirot replied, his eyes gleaming. And that, mon ami, is why we must proceed with care. The truth, it is here, in the details. Leaving the sergeant to guard the study, Poirot and Hargreaves returned to the drawing-room, where the guests waited like actors in a play paused mid-scene. Poirot took his place by the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back, and addressed the room with the air of a conductor about to begin a symphony. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and deliberate, "a terrible crime has been committed this night. Sir Reginald Ashford, a man of distinction, lies dead, and it is my duty, nay, my obligation, to uncover the truth. I ask for your cooperation. Each of you will be questioned, and I assure you no detail is too small for Hercule Poirot." Clara Ashford, seated on a settee with Victor Crane at her side, looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "Monsieur Poirot, surely you don't think one of us?" Poirot's gaze softened, but only slightly. "Mademoiselle, I think nothing yet. I observe, I listen, and I ask questions. For example," he turned to the group, "where were each of you between 9:30 and 10:15 this evening?" A murmur of protest rose, but Poirot raised a hand, silencing it. "It is a simple question, no? Let us begin between them."
Poirot, too, seemed to notice, though he made no comment. "Very well," Poirot said, turning to Hargreaves. "Monsieur le Constable, I suggest we secure the study and allow the guests to retire, under supervision, of course. Tomorrow we shall continue our inquiries. The little grey cells, they require rest to work their magic." Hargreaves grunted his assent, and the guests dispersed, their footsteps heavy on the polished floors. Hastings lingered, watching Poirot, who stood by the fire, his expression distant. "What is it, Poirot?" Hastings asked quietly. "You've seen something, haven't you?" Poirot turned, his eyes sharp. "Oui, mon ami. A small thing, but significant. The letter opener. It is not from the desk set. It is an antique, from a collection elsewhere in the house. And the cigar smoke. It is not Sir Reginald's, yet it is fresh. Someone was in that study before the scream, and they wished us not to know." Hastings frowned. "You think the killer staged the scene?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "I think, Hastings, that the truth is like a fine tapestry. Pull one thread, and the pattern reveals itself. Tomorrow, we shall pull one." As the manor settled into an uneasy silence, Hastings felt the weight of the mystery deepen. Poirot, he knew, was already weaving the threads of suspicion, and the killer, whoever they were, had no idea how close the net was drawing. Chapter 4. The Interrogations. The morning sun broke through the heavy clouds over Blackthorn Manor, casting a pale, uncertain light across the estate. The grandeur of the previous evening was now muted by the grim reality of Sir Reginald Ashford's murder. In the breakfast room, the clink of china and the murmur of subdued voices did little to dispel the oppressive atmosphere. The guests, under the watchful eye of Constable Hargreaves Sergeant, "Sooner we sort this mess, the better." Poirot inclined his head. "Précisément. We shall start with Lady Eleanor. Madame, if you please." Lady Eleanor rose, her silk shawl draped elegantly over her shoulders, though her face betrayed a flicker of strain. She followed Poirot and Hastings to the library, a wood-panelled room lined with leather-bound volumes and dominated by a long oak table. Poirot took a seat at the head, gesturing for Lady Eleanor to sit opposite. Hastings stood by the window, notebook in hand, ready to jot down anything of note. "Madame," Poirot began, his green eyes fixed on her, "you have my deepest sympathies. To lose a husband in such a manner, it is a tragedy, but I must ask questions, and I beg you to answer with candor. Tell me of Sir Reginald's last hours. Did he seem troubled?" Lady Eleanor's lips tightened briefly before she spoke. "Reginald was himself.
He was preoccupied with the auction of the manuscript, of course. It was his pride, that collection. But troubled? No more than usual. He was a man who carried many burdens, his career, his investments, his family. Poirot nodded, his fingers steepled. And last night, you left the drawing room briefly, oui? At what time and for how long? She hesitated, her fingers smoothing the edge of her shawl. It was just before 10, I believe. I spoke with Mrs. Harrow, the housekeeper, about the menu for today's luncheon. I was gone perhaps 5 minutes, and you saw no one near the study. Poirot's tone was gentle but probing. No one, she said firmly. The corridor was empty. Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. And your husband's enemies, madame. He was a diplomat, a man of influence. Such men collect adversaries as others collect books. Lady Eleanor's gaze flickered to the window, then back to Poirot. Reginald had rivals, yes. His work in the Foreign Office made him enemies, but none here. These people. Cocktails. Something about investments. Crane looked furious, though he covered it well. Poirot's eyes gleamed. An argument, you say? Most interesting. And your movements, Doctor? You did not leave the drawing room. Not a step, Finch said gruffly. Ask Mrs. Langley if you don't believe me. The interviews continued. Mrs. Beatrice Langley confirmed Finch's alibi, though her flair for the dramatic coloured her account with speculation about dark motives and hidden passions. Victor Crane, polished and composed, admitted to a brief disagreement with Sir Reginald over a financial venture, but insisted it was resolved amicably. His alibi, tied to Clara, held firm, though Poirot noted the young man's overly rehearsed delivery. Clara Ashford was the last to be questioned, her delicate frame trembling as she sat. Her eyes, red from crying, avoided Poirot's gaze. Mademoiselle, Poirot said gently, you loved your father, oui? Yet last night you were distressed, even before the tragedy. Why? Clara's fingers twisted her pearl bracelet, a gesture Hastings had noted before. I was worried about him, she said softly. He'd been so secretive lately, about the manuscript. He said it was dangerous, that someone might try to steal it. Poirot leaned forward, his voice low. Dangerous, you say? Did he name this someone? She shook her head, tears spilling. No, but he was afraid. I could see it in his eyes. As Clara left, Poirot sat back, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. Hastings closed his notebook. Well, Poirot? They all have alibis, more or less. But that business about the manuscript, do you think it's the key? Poirot's eyes were distant, his mind already weaving connections. The manuscript, Hastings. It is a thread, but not the only one. The letter opener, the cigar smoke, the open window with no footprints, these are murmur of Constable Hargreaves' men searching the grounds, their footsteps crunching on the gravel paths outside. Captain Hastings, standing near a window, watched the activity with a soldier's eye, noting the inefficiency of the local police as they tramped through the rose garden. Hercule Poirot, however, seemed oblivious to the bustle, seated in a high-backed chair with a cup of tisane, his eyes half closed, as if in meditation. Yet Hastings knew better. Poirot's apparent tranquility was a facade. The little grey cells were working furiously, sifting through the tangle of alibis and half-truths from the morning's interviews. The murder of Sir Reginald Ashford had cast a net of suspicion over the household, and now, as the investigation deepened, the first false trails began to emerge, as Poirot had predicted they would. Constable Hargreaves strode into the room, his face flushed with purpose. Monsieur Poirot, he announced, holding up a small object wrapped in a handkerchief. We found something. In the shrubbery, just below the study window,
Looks like it might be important. Poirot opened his eyes, his gaze sharpening as he took the handkerchief. Unfolding it, he revealed a single cufflink, silver, and engraved with the initials V.C. He turned it over in his gloved fingers, his expression unreadable. "Victor Crane, I presume," he said softly, glancing at the young stockbroker, who had just entered the room with Clara Ashford. Victor's face paled, though he recovered quickly, his smile strained. "That's mine, yes. Must have lost it yesterday when I took a walk around the grounds. Clumsy of me." "Indeed," Poirot said, his tone neutral. "And you took this walk? When, precisely?" "Yesterday afternoon," Victor said, a touch too quickly. "Before cocktails. Clara was with
Study window last night, just before 10. Couldn't see his face, mind, but he was wearing a dark coat. And Mr. Crane here was in a dark coat at dinner, wasn't he?" Victor's composure faltered, his jaw tightening. "Half the men in this house own dark coats, Constable. You can't pin this on me because of a cufflink and some vague sighting." Lady Eleanor, seated near the fire, spoke up, her voice icy. "Victor, do control yourself. Accusations will not help. Monsieur Poirot, surely you see this is circumstantial at best." Poirot inclined his head. "Madame, all is circumstantial until it is not. But I agree we must look deeper. For example," he turned to the group, "has anyone else lost an item recently? A small thing, perhaps, that might have been misplaced?" The question hung in the air, met with silence. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, ever eager to stir the pot, leaned forward. "Well, now that you mention it, I did misplace a brooch yesterday, a silver one with a sapphire. I thought I'd left it in my room, but it's gone. Could it be related?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Perhaps, madame. Perhaps we shall see." As Hargreaves took Victor aside for further questioning, Poirot beckoned Hastings to a quiet corner. "What do you make of it, mon ami?" he asked, his voice low. Hastings frowned. "It looks bad for Crane, doesn't it? The cufflink, the gardener's story, it all points to him. And he was arguing with Sir Reginald about money." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Oui, it points to him. Too neatly, perhaps. The cufflink, it is found exactly where one would expect a clumsy killer to drop it. The gardener sees a man, but not his face. No, Hastings, this is a red herring, designed to distract. The true killer is cleverer than this." "You think someone planted the cufflink?" Hastings.
"Here's something odd earlier, around 9:30. A creak, like someone stepping on the loose floorboard near the study door. I thought it was the butler, but he was in the dining room." Poirot's eyes lit up. "A creak, you say? Most interesting. And this floorboard, it is distinctive?" "Oh yes, sir," she said. "It's been loose for years. Sir Reginald always meant to have it fixed." "Merci, madame," Poirot said, dismissing her with a nod. As she left, he turned to Hastings. "The net tightens, mon ami. A creak at 9:30. The cigar smoke. The letter opener from elsewhere in the house. These are not accidents. Someone was in that study before the murder, and they left a trail, however faint." Hastings rubbed his chin. "But Victor's cufflink, Poirot. If it's a red herring, who planted it, and why?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "That, Hastings, is the question. The killer wishes us to chase shadows, but Hercule Poirot is not so easily misled. We shall follow the true clues, and they will lead us to the heart of this maze." As the day progressed, the shadow of suspicion fell heavily on Victor Crane. But Hastings could see that Poirot's mind was elsewhere, piecing together a puzzle far more intricate than the constable's blunt accusations suggested. Chapter 6. A Clue in Detail. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of Blackthorn Manor, its golden rays doing little to warm the chill that had settled over the household. The guests, confined to the manor under Constable Hargreaves's orders, moved restlessly between the drawing-room and their private quarters, their nerves frayed by the weight of suspicion. Captain Hastings, standing by the library window, watched a pair of constables combing the shrubbery below, their efforts as futile as they were earnest. Hercule Poirot, however, was not with them. He sat at the oak table in the library, a small magnet
Of amendments to Sir Reginald's will, though the details were vague, cut off mid-sentence. Interrupted, you say, by the killer? Perhaps, Poirot said, setting the letter down, or perhaps Sir Reginald sensed danger. But there is more. The pen on the desk. It is a fountain pen, oui? Yet the nib is dry, and the ink bottle is capped tightly. If he was writing when he was attacked, why is there no ink on the nib? Hastings frowned, his mind struggling to keep pace. You think someone tempered with the scene, made it look like he was writing? Poirot's moustache twitched. Précisément. The killer. They wish us to believe Sir Reginald was caught unawares, writing at his desk. But the pen, the letter, the absence of struggle, these suggest a different story. And then there is this. He pointed to a faint smudge on the letter's edge, barely visible to the naked eye. A fingerprint, perhaps, but not in blood, in something oily. Curious, no? Before Hastings could respond, the library door opened, and Mrs. Beatrice Langley entered, her eyes bright with curiosity. Monsieur Poirot, I couldn't help overhearing the constables talking. They're still fixated on poor Victor Crane, aren't they? But I've been thinking, surely the manuscript is at the heart of this? It's worth a fortune, after all. Poirot regarded her with a polite smile. Madame Langley, your imagination, it is as vivid as your novels. The manuscript, oui, it is a motive, but not the only one. Tell me, you were in the drawing-room all evening, discussing with Dr. Finch. Did you notice anything at all, that seemed out of place? Mrs. Langley tilted her head, her expression thoughtful. Well, now that you mention it, I did notice Clara was terribly distracted. She kept glancing at the clock, as if expecting something. And Victor, he was trying to keep her calm, but I swear I saw him slip something into his pocket during dinner. A small vial, perhaps. Small brass key. Its surface worn but distinct. Poirot picked it up, turning it over in his hand. This key, Hastings, it was found in Sir Reginald's pocket. Yet it does not fit the study door, nor the desk. I suspect it belongs to something else. Perhaps the case for the manuscript? Hastings's eyes widened. You think the killer was after the manuscript? But it's still in the safe, isn't it? Poirot nodded. For now, oui. But we must verify. Come, let us see. They made their way to the study, where the sergeant stood guard. The safe, concealed behind a portrait of Sir Reginald's father, was locked. But Poirot, with Hargreaves's permission, used the combination provided by Lady Eleanor. Inside, the illuminated manuscript lay untouched, its gold-leafed pages gleaming in the dim light. But Poirot's attention was drawn to a small velvet box beside it, its lock matching the brass key. He opened it, revealing a single pearl earring, its twin missing. Curieux, Poirot murmured. This earring, it is not Lady Eleanor's style, nor Clara's. Yet it is hidden here, in a locked box. Why? Hastings rubbed his chin. A keepsake, or evidence? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Evidence, perhaps, of a secret. The oily smudge on the letter, the earring, the key. These are not random. They point to someone who was in the study before the murder, someone who left a trace they could not erase. As they returned to the library,
Poirot's mind was clearly racing, piecing together the inconsistencies. Hastings, though accustomed to his friend's methods, felt a thrill of anticipation. "You found something, haven't you, Poirot?" "Something that changes everything." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A detail, Hastings. A small detail, but it is..."
Ever the calm center of the storm, stood by the fireplace, his small frame radiating an authority that silenced the room when he spoke. He had spent the hours since examining the pearl earring and the oily smudge on the letter, his mind weaving connections that Hastings could only glimpse. Now, as the clock struck 4, Poirot clapped his hands lightly, drawing all eyes to him. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and measured. "The investigation, it progresses. But to find the truth, we must peel back the layers of deception. Each of you holds a piece of this puzzle, whether you know it or not. I ask now for honesty. Secrets, they fester, and in this house they have led to murder." The guests shifted uncomfortably, their faces a gallery of guarded expressions. Lady Eleanor, seated with regal poise, met Poirot's gaze with a cool defiance. "Monsieur Poirot, we have answered your questions. What more can you expect from us?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The truth, madame. For example, the pearl earring found in the safe. Whose is it? It does not belong to you, nor to Mademoiselle Clara. Yet it was hidden, locked away. Why?" A ripple of surprise passed through the room. Clara Ashford's hand flew to her throat, her pearl bracelet glinting as she did so. "An earring?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I don't know anything about it." Victor Crane at her side squeezed her hand, his expression tense. "Clara, you don't have to say anything. Monsieur Poirot, this is absurd. You're fishing for something that isn't there." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Fishing, Monsieur Crane? No, I am hunting, and my quarry is the truth. The earring, it is a clue, and it points to a secret, perhaps an affair, a betrayal, a motive for murder." Mrs. Beatrice Langley, never one to miss a dramatic moment, leaned forward. Who would benefit from such changes, or suffer if they were made? Clara's face crumpled, and she buried her head in her hands. Victor, his jaw clenched, stood abruptly. "This is enough. Clara's distraught, and you're badgering her with insinuations. My finances are my own, Poirot, and I had no reason to harm Sir Reginald. We were to be family." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Family, Monsieur Crane? Yet you argued with Sir Reginald about investments, and your cufflink, so conveniently found beneath the study window. You say it was lost in the afternoon, but Mademoiselle Clara, she hesitates when she confirms your alibi. Why?" Clara's head snapped up, her eyes wide. I didn't hesitate. Victor was with me, I swear it." But the crack in her voice betrayed her, and Hastings saw it. The flicker of doubt, the tremor of a lie. Poirot, too, noted it, his expression softening, but his eyes keen. "Mademoiselle, the truth, it is a burden, but it is lighter than guilt. If you know something, speak now." The room fell silent, the only sound the ticking of the mantel clock. Then, with a sob, Clara broke. "It wasn't Victor," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But Father was angry with me. He found out about a letter I wrote, a private letter. He said it would ruin everything." Poirot leaned forward, his voice gentle but insistent. "A letter, mademoiselle? To whom?" Clara shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't say. I promised I wouldn't. But it wasn't about money, I swear. Father, he was going to change his will because of it." The admission hung in the air, a spark igniting new suspicions. Lady Eleanor's face paled, and she rose, her voice sharp. "Clara, enough. You'll say no more until we speak privately." Poirot raised a hand, his authority unmistakable. Madame, your daughter has given us a thread, and we shall follow it. The letter, the to a truth that someone wishes to bury. Hastings frowned, but Clara's protecting someone. Victor, perhaps, or someone else entirely. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The lies, they multiply, but the truth, it is singular. We must find that letter, Hastings, and when we do, the tapestry of this crime will unravel. As they returned to the library to examine the study's contents once more, Hastings felt the weight of Poirot's certainty. The lies were surfacing, but the killer's identity remained just out of reach, hidden in the shadows of Blackthorn Manor's secrets. Chapter 8. The Emotional Turning Point. The late afternoon light filtered through the heavy drapes of Blackthorn Manor's library, casting a somber glow over the shelves of leather-bound books and the oak table where Hercule Poirot sat, his fingers steepled in thought. The air was thick with the residue of Clara Ashford's tearful confession, her revelation about the mysterious letter and her father's reaction, hanging over the house like a storm cloud, ready to burst. Captain Hastings, pacing near the window, felt the tension of the investigation reaching a crescendo, as if the walls themselves were straining under the weight of unspoken truths. The guests had been sent to their rooms under the pretext of rest, but the manor buzzed with restless energy. Constable Hargreaves, still fixated on Victor Crane's cufflink and the gardener's vague sighting, was coordinating a second search of the grounds, leaving Poirot free to pursue his own line of inquiry. Hastings, watching his friend's calm exterior, knew the little gray cells were working at a fever pitch, piecing together the fragments of the puzzle. Clara's letter, the pearl earring, the oily smudge, the dry fountain pen. Poirot rose abruptly, his eyes alight with purpose. "Hastings, mon ami, we must speak with Mademoiselle Clara again."
The fault lies with the one who struck the blow. But to find them, I must know the truth. The letter, did you write it? She nodded, a sob escaping her lips. Yes, I wrote it. But it wasn't what you think. Not an affair, not really. It was a plea. To someone I cared for, someone Father disapproved of. I begged them to leave, to stay away, because Father threatened to disinherit me if I didn't end it. Hastings, standing by the door, felt a pang of sympathy. Who was it, Clara? He asked gently. This person you wrote to. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper, as if the walls might betray her. It was Robert Langley, Mrs. Langley's nephew. He's a painter, a dreamer, not the sort Father wanted for me. We met last summer in London, and I fell in love. But Father found the letter before I could send it. He was furious, said it would ruin the family's reputation. Poirot's eyes narrowed, a spark of understanding flickering within them. And this letter, mademoiselle, where is it now? Clara shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't know. Father took it. He said he'd burn it, but I don't know if he did. I swear I didn't want him to die. Poirot placed a reassuring hand on her arm. Calm, mademoiselle. You have done well to tell me this. The letter, it is a key, and we shall find it. But tell me, did anyone else know of this letter? Your mother, perhaps, or Monsieur Crane? Clara's eyes widened. Victor. He knew I was upset, but I didn't tell him about Robert. Mother might have suspected, but Father kept it from her. He said it was my shame to bear. Poirot rose, his expression thoughtful. Merci, mademoiselle. You have given us a great gift, the truth. Rest now, and trust that Hercule Poirot will see justice done.
Yes, he's a charming boy, an artist, though not much for society.
He and Clara met at one of my readings in London. I didn't think it serious, but you think he's involved?" Poirot's eyes were unyielding. "I think, madame, that secrets have a way of escaping their keepers. Did you know of a letter Clara wrote to your nephew?" Mrs. Langley hesitated, then nodded. "I overheard Clara talking to herself one evening about a letter. I didn't know the details, but I warned her to be careful. Sir Reginald was a formidable man, not one to cross." "And you told no one?" Poirot pressed. "No one," she said, though her eyes flickered briefly toward the door. "It wasn't my place." As she left, Hastings turned to Poirot. "She's lying, isn't she? She knew more than she's letting on." Poirot nodded, his expression grave. "Oui, mon ami. The lies, they multiply, but the truth is close. The letter, the earring, the pomade, they point to a conspiracy, perhaps, or a betrayal. We must find that letter, Hastings, for it holds the name of the one who could not let Sir Reginald live." The emotional weight of Clara's confession had cracked the facade of Blackthorn Manor, but Poirot's work was far from done. The killer, he knew, was watching, waiting for the next move in this deadly game of wits.
Chapter 9. The Trap. The evening shadows stretched long across Blackthorn Manor, cloaking the estate in a somber twilight that mirrored the growing tension within its walls. The guests, confined to the drawing room under Constable Hargreaves' watchful eye, sat in a strained silence, their earlier civility replaced by a palpable unease. The revelations of the day, Clara Ashford's tearful confession about her secret letter to Robert Langley, and the hints of deeper betrayals, had left the household on edge, as if each person feared the next turn of the screw. Captain Hastings, standing by the fireplace, felt the weight of the moment, sensing that Hercule Poirot was preparing to spring a trap. Poirot himself stood at the center of the room, his small frame commanding attention with an effortless authority. His green eyes swept over the assembled guests. Lady Eleanor, rigid with composure. Clara, pale and trembling. Victor Crane, his jaw set in defiance. Dr. Malcolm Finch, arms crossed and scowling. And Mrs. Beatrice Langley, her novelist's curiosity tinged with apprehension. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the manor itself awaited Poirot's next move. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and deliberate. "We stand at a crossroads in this tragic affair. Sir Reginald Ashford was murdered, not by chance, but by design, a design woven with precision and concealed by lies. Tonight, I propose to unravel those lies, to lay bare the truth. But to do so, I require your attention, and perhaps your fear." Lady Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Monsieur Poirot, this melodrama is unnecessary. We have cooperated fully. What more do you intend?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Madame, I intend to provoke the killer. They are among us, watching, listening." Found on Sir Reginald's desk. It smells of pomade, a scent I have traced to one person in this room.
All eyes turned to Dr. Finch, whose hair was slicked with a distinctive pomade. He bristled, his voice sharp. "Now see here, Poirot. I was in the drawing room all evening, as Mrs. Langley can confirm. You're barking up the wrong tree." Mrs. Langley nodded, though her expression was uneasy. "He's right, Monsieur Poirot. We were together, discussing my work. Surely you don't think Malcolm—" Poirot's gaze was unrelenting.
"Madame, I think nothing yet. I observe. And I observe that the smudge, it is not the only clue. The creak of the floorboard at 9:30, heard by Mrs. Harrow, suggests someone was near the study before the murder. The cigar smoke, lingering in the air, belongs to no one who admits to smoking. And the pearl earring, whose is it? Not Mademoiselle Clara's, nor Lady Eleanor's. Yet it was locked in the safe, with a key found in Sir Reginald's pocket. Clara's hands trembled, and she spoke in a whisper. "I told you, Monsieur Poirot. I don't know about the earring. I swear it." Poirot turned to her, his voice softening. "Mademoiselle, I believe you. But someone knows. Someone who knew of your letter to Robert Langley, who knew your father's anger, who saw an opportunity in his death. And now I shall set a trap." He produced a small envelope from his pocket, holding it aloft. "This, mes amis, is a letter, not the one Mademoiselle Clara wrote, but a copy I have prepared. It contains a name, a motive, a secret. I have placed it in the safe, locked with the same key. Tonight, I shall leave the study unguarded. If the killer wishes to protect their secret, they will try to retrieve it, and Hercule Poirot will be waiting." A gasp rippled.
Guests were dismissed to their rooms, under strict instructions to remain there. Poirot and Hastings retired to the library to plan. "The trap, Hastings," Poirot said softly. "It is not just the letter. It is the pressure, the knowledge that I am close. The killer, they will make a mistake tonight, and we shall be ready." Hastings nodded, his heart racing. The trap was set, and the manor's secrets were about to be laid bare. The killer, hidden among the guests, was walking into Poirot's carefully woven net, and the truth, so long obscured, was within reach. Chapter 10. The Reveal. The night descended over Blackthorn Manor like a velvet curtain, its silence broken only by the occasional creak of the old house settling, or the distant hoot of an owl in the Sussex woods. The guests had retired to their rooms, ostensibly to rest, but the air thrummed with the tension of Hercule Poirot's trap, set with the precision of a master strategist. Captain Hastings, stationed in a shadowed alcove near the study, felt his pulse quicken as he watched the corridor, his hand resting lightly on the revolver in his pocket. A precaution, though he trusted Poirot's plan to unfold without violence. Poirot himself was concealed in the study, hidden behind a heavy curtain that afforded a clear view of the safe. The decoy letter, placed within, was a lure designed to draw the killer out, and Poirot's confidence in its success was unshakable. Hastings, though accustomed to his friend's methods, felt a knot of anticipation in his chest. The clues, the pearl earring, the oily smudge, the cigar smoke, Clara's letter, had woven a complex web, and now, as midnight approached, the truth was about to be ensnared. At precisely 11:47 p.m., a faint creak echoed from the corridor, the same loose floorboard Mrs. Harrow had mentioned. Hastings stiffened, his eyes straining in the dim light. A figure emerged, moving with cautious deliberation toward the study door. The silhouette was unmistakable. Dr. Malcolm Finch hid into the room with his sergeant. Finch's eyes darted between them, his composure crumbling. "This is preposterous. I was in the drawing room all evening. You have no proof." Poirot's mustache twitched, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "No, doctor, I have proof. Proof woven from the threads you could not cut. Let us unravel this tapestry, step by step, for all to understand." The guests, roused by the commotion, gathered in the study, their faces a mix of confusion and dread. Lady Eleanor, Clara, Victor Crane, and Mrs. Beatrice Langley stood in a tense semicircle as Poirot began his explanation, his voice clear and deliberate. "Mesdames et messieurs, the murder of Sir Reginald was no act of passion, but a calculated act to protect a secret. Let us begin with the clues. The letter opener, an antique from the library, not the desk, was chosen deliberately. Its weight and sharpness ensured a single, fatal blow. The window, open but with undisturbed dust, was a misdirection, meant to suggest an outsider. The cufflink, belonging to Monsieur Crane, was planted to cast suspicion.
but it was too obvious, a red herring. He turned to Finch, who stood rigid under Hargreaves' grip. But the true clues, they were subtler. The oily smudge on the letter, a trace of your pomade, Doctor, left when you handled it. The cigar smoke in the study, which Sir Reginald did not smoke, came from your pipe, which you smoked earlier that evening, thinking it would dissipate. And the pearl earring hidden in the safe, it belonged to your late wife, did it not? Finch's face paled, but he said nothing. Poirot continued, his voice relentless. The motive, it was not money, but fear. Sir Reginald discovered a secret you could not allow to be exposed. You, Dr. Finch, were blackmailing him. Years ago in his diplomatic career, Sir Reginald made a grave
earring, perhaps kept as a memento of his wife, while searching the safe for Sir Reginald's incriminating documents. He locked it away, hoping it would go unnoticed. But Hercule Poirot notices everything. Finch's shoulders slumped, his voice low. You can't prove it. It's all conjecture. Poirot's smile was cold. No, Doctor. The pomade, the earring, the timing, they are proof enough. And tonight you could not resist checking the safe, fearing I had found the real letter, the one Sir Reginald wrote, detailing your blackmail. It is hidden still, but I shall find it. Hargreaves tightened his grip on Finch. That's enough for me. You're coming with us, Doctor. As Finch was led away, the room erupted in murmurs. Clara clung to Victor, sobbing, while Lady Eleanor stood frozen, her face a mask of shock. Mrs. Langley, ever the observer, whispered, What a story this will make. Hastings, watching Poirot, felt a surge of admiration. You did it, Poirot. You saw through it all, the lies, the distractions. Poirot inclined his head, his expression serene. The little grey cells, Hastings. They see what others overlook. The truth, it is always there, waiting to be found. As the guests dispersed, the weight of the revelation settled over Blackthorn Manor, the shadows of deceit finally giving way to the light of justice. Chapter 11. The Reflection. The morning after Dr. Malcolm Finch's dramatic unmasking dawned clear and crisp over Blackthorn Manor, the autumn sun bathing the estate in a light that seemed to cleanse the shadows of the previous night's revelations. The oppressive tension that had gripped the household had lifted, replaced by a quiet melancholy, as if the manor itself mourned the loss of its master and the betrayal of a trusted friend. Captain Hastings, standing on the terrace overlooking the rose garden, felt a mixture of relief.
Must not judge too harshly. To understand all is to forgive much. They walked slowly along the terrace, the gravel crunching underfoot. The guests were preparing to depart, their bags packed under the supervision of Constable Hargreaves' men. Lady Eleanor, ever the stoic matriarch, had retreated to her rooms, issuing instructions through the butler. Clara and Victor Crane were in the drawing-room, their engagement strained but intact, while Mrs. Beatrice Langley was already scribbling notes for what she promised would be her most sensational novel yet. Hastings glanced at Poirot. You were brilliant, you know. The way you pieced it all together, the pomade, the earring, the letter. I thought Victor was our man, with that cufflink and the argument over money. But you saw through it all. Poirot's smile was modest, though his eyes twinkled with pride. The little grey cells, Hastings, they do not rest. The cufflink, it was too obvious, a clumsy attempt to shift blame. But the true clues, the oily smudge, the cigar smoke, the earring in the safe, they spoke of a mind both cunning and careless. Dr. Finch, he thought himself clever, but he underestimated Hercule Poirot. They paused by a stone bench, and Poirot sat, gesturing for Hastings to join him.
Consider, mon ami, the nature of this crime. It was not about the manuscript, though its value tempted many. It was about secrets, secrets of the past, secrets of the heart. Sir Reginald's diplomatic indiscretions, Clara's forbidden love, Finch's blackmail, they were threads in a tapestry of deceit. And yet the truth, it is always simple when one sees it clearly. Hastings frowned, his mind still grappling with the complexities. But the letter Clara wrote to Robert Langley, did you ever find it? The real one, I mean, not your decoy. Poirot's expression grew solemn. No, Hastings, I did not. I suspect Sir Reginald destroyed it, as he threatened, to protect his daughter's reputation.
Though his demeanor remained serene. "Hastings," he said as they entered the hall, "life, it is a puzzle. We solve one and another awaits. But it is in the solving that we find meaning. The little gray cells, they thrive on such work." Hastings chuckled, shaking his head. "You're incorrigible, Poirot. Always philosophizing. But I'll admit I'm glad to have you and those gray cells on the side of justice." Poirot's smile was warm, a rare glimpse of affection. "And I, mon cher Hastings, am glad to have you at my side. Now, let us depart this place of secrets and return to the simplicity of London." As they stepped into the waiting car, the manor receding behind them, Hastings felt a sense of closure. The mystery of Blackthorn Manor was solved, its secrets laid bare, and Hercule Poirot, with his meticulous mind and unerring logic, had once again brought light to the darkness. The road ahead stretched toward new adventures, and Hastings, ever the loyal companion, was ready to follow. Chapter 12. A New Shadow. The train to London clattered rhythmically through the Sussex countryside, its steady hum a stark contrast to the turmoil that had gripped Blackthorn Manor. Captain Hastings, seated opposite Hercule Poirot in their first-class compartment, watched the rolling hills blur past, his mind still tangled with the events of the past days. Dr. Malcolm Finch's arrest had brought the case to a close, yet a nagging unease lingered, as if some piece of the puzzle remained just out of reach. Poirot, immaculate as ever, sat with his eyes half closed, a faint smile playing beneath his mustache, as though savoring the triumph of his little gray cells. "Hastings," Poirot said suddenly, his voice breaking the silence. "You are troubled, oui? The case is solved, the murderer apprehended, yet you frown. What is it that disturbs you?" Hastings shifted in his seat, rubbing his chin.
New development, it seems. A letter, Clara's letter perhaps, has been found, hidden in a secret compartment in Sir Reginald's desk. And there is more. Robert Langley was seen in the village yesterday, before the murder. Hastings' heart quickened. Langley? But Clara said he wasn't there. Could he have been involved after all? Poirot's fingers tapped rhythmically on the armrest. It is possible, Hastings. The letter, it may reveal more than Mademoiselle Clara admitted. And Langley's presence, it raises questions. Was he truly absent, or did he play a role we have not yet seen? We must return to Blackthorn Manor at once. The decision made, Poirot arranged for their immediate return, the train's rhythm now a backdrop to his racing thoughts. By early afternoon they were back at the manor, greeted by a grim-faced Hargreaves. The guests, still present under police supervision, were gathered in the drawing room, their faces a mix of exhaustion and renewed anxiety. Hargreaves led Poirot and Hastings to the study, where the desk's hidden compartment had been uncovered, a narrow panel beneath the blotter, revealed by a spring mechanism. Inside was a single envelope, addressed in Clara's delicate hand to Mr. Robert Langley. Poirot opened it carefully, his eyes scanning the contents. "It is as Mademoiselle Clara said," he murmured. "A plea to end their connection, written in desperation. She begs Langley to leave her, to avoid her father's wrath. But there is more, a postscript, written in haste. She mentions a meeting, planned for the night of the murder, in the village. Hastings' eyes widened. A meeting? So Langley was there. Could he have come to the manor, confronted Sir Reginald? Poirot's expression was grave. It is possible, mon ami. But the letter, it does not prove murder. We must speak with Mademoiselle Clara. They found Clara in her room, her face pale and drawn. Victor Crane stood protectively nearby, but Poirot dismissed him with a wave.
No, Hastings. Dr. Finch acted alone, I am certain. His motive was blackmail, his method precise. But Langley's presence, it is a complication. We must find him. Hargreaves, overhearing, nodded. My men are searching the village. If Langley's still nearby, we'll have him by nightfall. As the day wore on, Poirot and Hastings combed through the study once more, searching for any trace of Langley's involvement. A faint mark on the carpet near the window caught Poirot's eye. A scuff, as if from a boot, too small to be Finch's. Curieux, he murmured. Perhaps Monsieur Langley was closer than we thought. By evening, Hargreaves returned with news. Robert Langley had been found, hiding in a boarding house in the village. Under questioning, he admitted to coming to see Clara, but denied entering the manor or confronting Sir Reginald. His story was shaky, his fear palpable, but no evidence linked him directly to the crime. Poirot, standing in the drawing-room, addressed the guests once more. Mes amis, a shadow has been cast, but it is not a new killer. Monsieur Langley, he was a catalyst, his presence a spark that fueled Dr. Finch's fear. The letter, it confirmed. Sir Reginald's intent to expose the blackmail, and Finch, he acted to protect himself. The case, it is closed, but the lesson remains. Secrets, they breed destruction. As the guests absorbed his words, Hastings felt the unease lift, though questions lingered. Poirot, ever enigmatic, seemed satisfied, his little grey cells at rest. But the shadow of Robert Langley and the secrets of Blackthorn Manor would linger in Hastings' mind long after they left the estate behind. Chapter 13. The Unseen Thread. The twilight of Blackthorn Manor was a study in contrasts, with the fading light casting intricate patterns through the leaded windows, as if the house a sign of deep contemplation. The letter, Hastings. Mademoiselle Clara's letter to Robert Langley. It was the spark, yes, but there is another question. How did Dr. Finch know of it so quickly? Sir Reginald confided in him, perhaps, but the speed, the precision, it suggests another hand, another pair of eyes in this house. The guests, still lingering under police supervision, were gathered in the drawing-room for a final briefing before their departure. Lady Eleanor, her composure a brittle mask, sat with Clara, who clutched Victor Crane's hand as if it were a lifeline. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, ever the observer, scribbled notes in a small journal, while Constable Hargreaves stood by the door, his face etched with fatigue but determination. Poirot, sensing the moment, beckoned them all to the library, where the investigation had begun. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice carrying the weight of authority. The crime of Sir Reginald Ashford's murder is solved, and Dr. Finch will face justice. But there is one final matter, a thread that must be tied. The letter written by Mademoiselle Clara, discovered by her father, it was a private matter, yet it reached Dr. Finch's ears with remarkable speed. How? The room stirred, eyes darting between one another. Lady Eleanor's lips tightened, and she spoke with icy precision. Monsieur Poirot, you have done your work. Why drag this out? My husband is dead, my daughter humiliated. Let us move on. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. Madame, the truth, It is not always kind, but it is necessary. Someone in this house ensured Dr. Finch knew of the letter, perhaps to provoke him, perhaps to protect another secret. I ask now, who? Mrs. Langley closed her journal with a snap, her eyes gleaming. Monsieur Poirot, you're suggesting a conspiracy? How knew its significance. You, madame, were in the study before the murder, were you not? You dropped the earring, perhaps in a moment of haste, while searching for something, perhaps the letter itself. The room was deathly silent, the ticking of the mantel clock loud in the stillness. Mrs. Langley's composure cracked, her voice sharp. This is outrageous. I was in the drawing room all evening, as Dr. Finch confirmed. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Oui, but the creak of the floorboard at 9:30, heard by Mrs. Harrow. It was you, madame, moving toward the study. You knew of Clara's letter because you eavesdropped, as is your habit. You saw an opportunity to stir discord, to protect your nephew's interests, perhaps, or to gain leverage over Sir Reginald. You told Dr. Finch, knowing his blackmail made him volatile, hoping to shift his attention from your nephew to Clara's indiscretion. Mrs. Langley's face flushed, her hands trembling. You have no proof, Poirot. This is speculation, nothing more. Poirot's smile was cold. The proof, madame, is in the earring and in the timing. You were seen by the butler, lingering near the study door earlier that evening, before dinner. You deny it, but the little grey cells, they do not lie. You did not kill Sir Reginald, non. But you set the stage, and for that you bear a share of the guilt. Mrs. Langley sank back, her bravado gone. Clara's eyes filled with tears, and she turned to Victor, who looked stunned. Lady Eleanor rose, her voice cutting through the tension. Enough, Monsieur Poirot. You have exposed our shame. Let it end here. Poirot inclined his head. It ends, madame, with the truth. The killer is caught, the secrets laid bare. Hercule Poirot seeks only justice, and it is served. As Hargreaves escorted Mrs. Langley to provide a formal statement, Hastings turned to Poirot, his voice low. And the exposure of Mrs. Beatrice Langley's role in stoking the fires of the tragedy had brought the case to a close. Yet the emotional toll lingered, like the echo of a distant bell. Hercule Poirot, ever composed, adjusted his gloves with meticulous care, his eyes scanning the hall one final time. His work was done, the puzzle solved, but Hastings knew his friend's mind was still turning, reflecting on the human frailties that had fueled the crime. The butler, somber and efficient, stood ready to escort them to the car. But Poirot lingered, as if reluctant to leave the scene of such a complex drama. Hastings, mon ami, Poirot said, his voice soft but resonant. You feel the weight of this place, oui? The tragedy of Blackthorn Manor. It is not just in the death of Sir Reginald, but in the wounds left upon the living. Hastings nodded, his thoughts drifting to Clara Ashford, whose tear-streaked face had haunted him since her confession. Poor Clara, he said. To lose her father, to have her love for Robert Langley exposed, and now to know Mrs. Langley played a part in it all. It's too much for her to bear. Poirot's expression was one of quiet sympathy. Mademoiselle Clara, she is young, and the young, they are resilient. But the heart, it carries scars. She will need time, and perhaps the support of Monsieur Crane, though his motives, they remain complex. They stepped outside where the car waited to take them to the station. The other guests were preparing to leave as well, their departures staggered to avoid further conflict. Lady Eleanor, cloaked in stoic dignity, had issued a brief statement through the butler, thanking Poirot for his work but requesting privacy for the family. Victor Crane, ever the opportunist, hovered near Clara, his protectiveness tinged with a calculating air that Hastings found unsettling. Mrs. Langley, now subdued, had been released after giving her statement, her literary ambitions tempered by the reality of her actions. As they walked toward the car, Hastings glanced back at the manor, gleamed with the quiet pride of a craftsman.
It is the method, mon ami. The little grey cells. They observe. They analyze. They connect. The truth. It is like a symphony. Each note must be in its place, or the harmony is lost. Dr. Finch, he played a false note, and Mrs. Langley, she added discord. But Hercule Poirot, he restores the melody. The countryside rolled past, its fields and hedgerows a soothing contrast to the turmoil of the manor. Hastings thought of Robert Langley, now cleared of suspicion but likely forever estranged from Clara, his dreams of love shattered by the scandal. "And Langley?" he asked. "What becomes of him?" Poirot's expression grew pensive. "Monsieur Langley, he is a victim of circumstance, drawn into a tragedy not of his making. He will paint, he will dream, and perhaps, in time, he will find peace. But for now, he carries the weight of a love that could not be." As the car approached the station, Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice low. "This case, Hastings, it reminds us of the fragility of trust. Sir Reginald trusted Dr. Finch, Clara trusted Mrs. Langley, and yet betrayal came from within. We must guard our own trust, mon ami, for it is a precious thing." Hastings nodded, moved by the sentiment. "You're right, Poirot, and I trust you, always, to find the truth." Poirot's smile was warm, a rare glimpse of affection. "And I, Hastings, trust you to be my friend, my conscience. Now, let us return to London, where the air is clear and the puzzles, they await." As the train whistle sounded in the distance, Hastings felt a sense of closure, though the echoes of Blackthorn Manor would linger. The case was solved, the guilty exposed, and Poirot's genius had prevailed once more. Yet the human cost, the broken hearts, the shattered trust, reminded him that even in victory there was a price to be paid. Chapter 15.
Still sifting through the case's echoes. "Poirot," Hastings ventured, breaking the silence. "It's done, isn't it? Finch is in custody. Mrs. Langley's role exposed. Clara's secret laid bare. Yet you seem unsatisfied. Is there something we missed?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile softening his features. "Mon cher Hastings, you are perceptive, as always. The case, it is solved. The murderer caught. The motives revealed. But the human heart, it does not close so neatly as a puzzle. There is always a shadow, a lingering question. In this case, it is the question of what might have been, had trust not been broken, had secrets not festered." Hastings leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "You mean Clara and Robert Langley? Their love torn apart by all this?" "Oui," Poirot said, his voice soft. "And more. The tragedy of Blackthorn Manor is not only in Sir Reginald's death, but in the ripples it sends through those who remain. Lady Eleanor, she must rebuild a family fractured by scandal. Mademoiselle Clara, she must find her strength. And Madame Langley, she must live with the knowledge that her curiosity, her love of secrets, fueled a murder." The train slowed as it approached Victoria Station, the platform bustling with evening travellers. Hastings glanced at Poirot, whose gaze was fixed on the notebook in his lap. "You wrote it all down, didn't you?" he said. "Every detail, the cigar smoke, the earring, the oily smudge, the creaking floorboard. It's like a map of the crime." Poirot nodded, his fingers brushing the notebook's cover. "A map, oui, but also a mirror. It reflects the truth, but also the flaws of those who made it. Dr. Finch, he saw only gain in his blackmail, not the destruction it would bring. Madame Langley, she saw a story, not the pain her actions would cause. And now, Poirot, back to your flat, a cup of tisane, and the next puzzle?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Précisément, Hastings. The world, it does not stop turning, and the puzzles, they do not cease. But for tonight, a quiet evening, a moment to reflect. And tomorrow, who knows what challenge awaits Hercule Poirot?
As the taxi wove through London's streets, Hastings felt a sense of closure, tempered by the knowledge that new mysteries lay ahead. Blackthorn Manor was behind them, its secrets exposed, its tragedy complete. Yet the memory of Clara's tears, Lady Eleanor's stoicism, and Mrs. Langley's remorse would linger, a reminder of the human cost of truth. Poirot, with his little grey cells and unshakable resolve, had brought justice once more, and Hastings, ever at his side, was ready for whatever lay beyond the final curtain.